There are situations where you can't play your regular dominant chords. Just listen to this. That doesn't sound right. That's because that G13 does not belong to the C minor scale we're in. So in that case, you would have to use a chord that has the tones of the C minor scale in, and that's an altered chord. So today you learn what altered chords are, when to use them, and how to apply them in real life situations. My name is Sandra Sherman, and I simplify jazz for you. Altered chords are dominant chords like C7 or D7, with their tensions being raised by a half tone up or down. The tensions are 9, 11, and 13. So if you raise or lower them by a semitone, you get these alterations and all combinations thereof. Now let's find a chord voicing for each tone of the G altered scale. We're going to be doing this on the B string now, so the top note will be what we harmonize. B, C sharp, that's a sharp 11, flat 13, 7th, root, flat 9, sharp 9, 3rd. That's the G altered scale. So let's start the first voicing with the B on top. So that's a G7 flat 9. Beautiful. Now you just add your middle finger and you get that C sharp, which was the is the sharp 11. G7 flat 9 sharp 11. Right? Now next would be the sharp 5. The thing is, we often also harmonize the 5th. We can use altered chords that also include a 5th. That's not a perfect altered chord. I know that. This comes from the diminished scale. But we use that a lot. It's a common substitution. So we play a G7 flat 9 chord in the shape of a B diminished. Here would be a root. There is no root in that voicing. So memorize your what I call virtual root, okay? One to the left on the next string is the 3rd, and the 3rd of the chord you start a diminished voicing, and now you get a G7 flat 9. Now let's continue with that sharp 5, G7 sharp 5. That's a standard voicing for altered. And this 7th, we're going to be using a diminished chord again, so that's a G7 flat 9 again, because these diminished chords repeat themselves all 3 frets, and it's the exact same thing. I have a video on that actually. Then root, we harmonize by a G7 flat 13, G7 flat 9 for the flat 9 on top, sharp 9, then a 3rd on top again. Chord tones will always harmonize with that G7 flat 9, which is an A flat diminished now. You can also play a sharp 5 chord here, actually, a real altered chord, but it's a little tricky up here, to be honest. It's easier if you play on D, for example, but here it's a little tricky. And that's it for the B string, actually. If you want to dig deeper into jazz playing, check out my starter packs. I have all different kinds of genres like Latin, jazz, blues. You learn how to do the rhythm comping, you learn how to improvise. There are chord melody packages on my lesson shop. And all the lesson material is included, like the tabs, Guitar Pro tabs, including tabs and notation, backing tracks, and of course the link to the detailed video tutorials. The price on these packages is a no-brainer, so click the link down below in the description box and grab yours now. You have to use one of the altered group chords in these situations. Rule number 1, after a half diminished chord. Let's say you have a D half diminished on your lead sheet, and it's followed in 95% of the times, it's followed by its 5 chord, the G7. Now you have to alter it. That was the example we had before, otherwise the scale would be wrong. So you always have to alter this. Maybe it even resolves, okay? So after half diminished, you play an altered chord. Up here, this would be G7, sharp 9, for example, or flat 9. You can pick any chord you like, but it has to be an altered chord. Rule number 2, before a minor resolution. So if you have a G7 on your lead sheet and it resolves to C minor, you have to alter this. So a resolution is always a fourth up, G resolves to C, or a fifth down. That's even, you hear that better here. G to C resolution, right? So before a C minor resolution, you always have to alter. Mind you, only one of the rules, one of the 4 rules has to apply, not more, not 2. In this case, you could have a whole 2-5-1 in minor, and then 2 rules apply, after half diminished and before the minor resolution. But it wouldn't have to be so. So if there was no D half diminished before that, and you would just have G altered and something else before that, it's still the one rule applies. The rule that you have to alter before the minor resolution. Rule number 3, if the lead sheet says so. What does that mean? Let's say the lead sheet says G7 sharp 5. You have to play an altered group chord now, because there's a reason the lead sheet says that, probably because maybe the sharp 5 is in the melody. But you don't have to play exactly this one. It would be probably the best. But let's say you're up here somewhere. You don't have a sharp 5 chord maybe up there. You play this one. That's a flat 13 chord. Well, that's actually a sharp 5 chord as well, sorry. But you play the sharp 9 or the flat 9. It doesn't really matter, right? So you can play any of the group chords if the lead sheet says has an altered chord there already. Now the last rule is optional, and it's applied usually when you comp the soloist. So this one is when it resolves to major. Let's say you have a G7 in a lead sheet and a C major 7 after it. During the melody, if you comp the melody, the head section, you would not alter this. You would play a G13 in this case, or when you're up here, a G9 or whatever unaltered dominant chord. Because the melody usually doesn't have any alterations in there. If it has, then probably rule number 3 would apply if the lead sheet says so, because then it would be in the lead sheet already. So usually the melody is not that complicated. But for the soloist, we want to have more fun and more color for the soloist. And ever since the 1940s, everything is altered in the solo. So you alter this chord if it resolves. If you're up here, G7 sharp 9 or flat 9, resolving to C major 7. So we have a 2-5-1 in major. That would be the situation where you're comping a soloist. And I like to do that pedal bass trick with the G stays in the bass for the whole 2-5-1. I start with the G9 sus4 chord, which is a good substitution for a D minor chord. It's basically just a D minor 11 chord with the 11th in bass. And then you switch your 2 fingers and you get that altered chord, G7 flat 5 flat 9, flat 5, or flat 9, sharp 11. That's Joe Pass's favorite chord. Actually was Joe Pass's favorite chord. Then C6-9 with the G in bass, right? That's C6-9 here. And then later I go over to the C6-9. So that's actually it. Regular comping pattern. And a little sidestepping here. Ba, ba, ba. That's it. So here we have a chord melody situation that you can play with or without the band. And I start with that. It's a 2-5-1 again in C major. That's D minor 7. Moving the using the D Dorian scale. And here are the G altered chords. G7 sharp 9, Then I don't play the whole G7 flat 9 chord. You could do that. It depends on the tempo, of course. But it's often in chord melody, it's clearer if every other note is being played as a single note. That's usually better for the ear. So just play that alone. Then to the whole G7 flat 13 chord. And going down, I just played a G altered scale backwards. Right? Sharp 9, flat 9, root. 7th leads me to the 3rd. The 7th of the altered chord leads me to the 3rd of the C major 7 chord. Now let's harmonize the high E string in order to get chords for chord melody, chord solo, and even chord comping fills. G altered scale, G, A flat, B flat, that's flat 9, sharp 9, 3rd, sharp 11, flat 13, 7th, and the root again. So let's start with the root, G7, sharp 5. This is derived from this voicing, and you put your G on top, and you get a G7, sharp 5, or flat 13 voicing. The same with the flat 9 on top, flat 9, flat 13. You could also play the diminished chord here, but since we already have something for the A flat that's better, usually we don't play the diminished here. But you have all the chords in the chords diagrams and tabs down below. And the same with the sharp 9. And this is a cluster I'll be showing you in the upcoming example. But learn this cluster because it's really used often. Then another one for the sharp 9 would be this chord. This is one of my favorites. A little tricky to find because the root is not in it. Here's the root. So that's sharp 5, sharp 9, or sharp 9, flat 13. A perfect altered chord. Then for the 3rd on top, we need a diminished chord again. So that's a G7 flat 9. That's the diminished shape. Then the sharp 11, sharp 9. This is our comping chord here that it's derived of, G7 sharp 9. Don't play the root, but the 11th, sharp 11, sorry, on top. G7, sharp 9, sharp 11, sharp 9, flat 13, and the 7 requires a diminished voicing again, so we have G7 flat 9, right? So these are the ones I would use mostly, sorry. And, oops, it's a little high up here. So here's a 2-5-1 again. We start with the D minor 7. We have a string splitting going on here. And then we go to that cluster I was talking about before, that G altered cluster. Sharp 9, flat 9, root, and then we go to the 7. It's like a melody. You don't have to add this one. Usually it's just played like that, but I wanted to add some more melody here. And it leads to the C major 7 chord. Now this time we have a 2-5-1 in the key of C minor, and I start with that D half diminished, upper voicing. I use string splitting here, bass first, slide to the left, back up, right. Then a G altered chord here, G altered with the sharp 11 on top, and it resolves right in the middle. That's an enclosure to a C minor 9, right? Okay. You find more such chord lessons in my chords playlist here on YouTube. Please also check out my lesson shop, GuitarVersum.com, for more lessons like this one. Please give this video a fat thumbs up because it's so important for me as a creator, so it's seen by other potential viewers. Please share the love and the knowledge. Hit that subscribe button and that bell notification so you never miss a new video. And I see you next week. Servus, Baba.